Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Gurudev. Gaura Premanandi.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much again for being here for this wonderful celebration. We're so grateful to have His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj here. Holiness Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Every time I think about His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj and His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I think about the two bodies, one soul. And so we're very grateful to have you here anytime, but even more so today. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for being here. And I just want to welcome His Grace Kalachandji Prabhu and Her Grace Shraddhanjali Mataji. Let's give them all a big Hari Bo. Hari Bo. We're so grateful on Srila Gurudev's 80th Yas Puja to have you both here with us. And we are praying that the visits become more and more frequent and we get more and more time with you, because it's so sweet to be with you personally, and even sweeter because it makes us feel closer to Srila Gurudev, who we all miss very much. So thank you so much for being here. Just ask everybody, let's please create a very sacred space here so we can all hear together. And if we have cell phones, let's please turn those off, because those can be quite disturbing. And if we have small children, yes. Yeah, and if you're not, the screen's over here, it's important that you can see the screen. So maybe if you're sitting on this side, if you want to scoot this way, and please come closer so they don't feel like they're here by themselves. I promise you they're very, very nice if you haven't had a chance to meet them yet. The closer you get, the better. And if we have small children, their nature is to play, which is so wonderful. We love that. But if they can't play quietly, then we just ask that they go outside. And if you're sitting in the benches, I'm so happy you're using them. But please, if you don't need to be sitting there and you see a senior citizen that needs it, you can offer it to them. But don't move now if nobody else needs it. Please feel comfortable to sit there as much as you need. Jai, let's give them all one more big Hari Bo. And we'll turn it over to you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Let's leave it just, yeah. Thank you. No, leave it. Yeah, I'll stand. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Please allow us to offer each of you our humble obeisances. It's gotcha. Okay. Just a few comments before we begin. First, it's a very special occasion for us, and I really request all of your prayers and blessings. I'm extremely nervous to speak with you like this, but here we are. I thought this would be a nice, that this would be a nice offering for Srila Gurudev's 80th. There are a couple quick things. We'll be showing many family photos. And these are photos that no one outside our family has ever seen before. And that's why we're asking not to photograph in any way the photos here, but it's a really nice, special, and intimate occasion. And it's really, here we are, it's for human beings in a room together. How unusual is that these days?
And we happen to be all family.
There, someone might have some questions. I'll be showing photos, and quite a few photos of our family, and also of Gurudev in very early years, well before, in childhood even. And so one might have a question, speaking about showing photos of sannyasi, spiritual master, any devotee before initiation. Our hope is that this will, your love already is unlimited, but it will nourish your love for Srila Gurudev. And he personally told me in my first Vyasa Pujas, he said, he asked me to do like this, to speak of those old days. He said he would never do it, but that I could do it. Also, he said, you have to be my memory, because he put so many things behind him. He just moved on, and once it started, it never stopped, for sure. So please forgive me if for any offenses in that regard or others. Also, there will be some times where maybe he said something very nice about me, about us, and just to, it is not about us. I'm embarrassed to show those things, but I think they really show the relationship as it developed, and all of this is to glorify Srila Gurudev, who will go by different names as I proceed. These photos, you've seen a few of them, and some of them even were shown over the course this morning. Some of them nobody outside of our family has ever seen anywhere. So I just feel very special to be able to share it with you like this. Also, this is just, as much as possible, I really want it to be an informal occasion. So please do not wait to the end for questions, interrupt any questions you have along the way. If you need me to repeat anything, or either of us, Shraddhanjali will be interrupting me, I hope, often. And many things you can remember that I can't remember. I've also you'll see some notes for myself to remember what to talk about. So I wanted to start, where are we? Let's see. I wanted to start here. Is that a full screen for you? Okay. For a particular reason. I will show maybe just 4 or 5 photos that are not our photos, obviously, that I did not take, but they're all to make particular points. And this one in particular, I'm not sure if it's in Jaipur, but you may be familiar with it. But I wanted to show an interesting way to start as he walks his legs. Because this is a family presentation, and his legs are our father's legs. This is the earliest photo of him, and I will not lift up my dhoti, but I will say that has continued on through the next generation as well. And it's
our son too.
Our son too. It's often been commented on. And I won't get into all of them, but when we got together for the first time, we started sharing things. We realized there were many things we had in common, including just genetics and certain experiences we'd had, certain health issues we'd had that we both shared but never had known that the other one did. And for instance, there was a period in each of our lives, we are 9.5 years separate, so quite different, and so often did not know anything about the other's experiences, not until the 1990s. But for instance, when we were maybe starting, 12 years old or something, we would have fainting spells. And just out of nothing, we would just drop fainting. I remember for me once it was on a subway car. There was nothing, and all of a sudden we're up. And this happened several times with him. We also shared several mannerisms that we had. I think my wife...
Our son fainted too.
Yeah, he also had this. And she recognizes just certain quirks of physical, or certain things we would do, or certain things we would say. Sometimes, especially when we were together a lot, our voices could be quite similar. And he enjoyed very much here in Dallas, my first visits, he would have me call out, whether it was, Kamadenu or whoever was being called, and he would it was that little room in the corner of his quarters, and he would hide behind me and have them call, and they would come running as fast as possible, and then they would come and be a little confused, and he would just laugh like anything. He would enjoy that so much. And also much later, after his departure, we traveled a bit visiting TKG yatras in different parts of the world. And in some places, in particular in China, as soon as I would start talking, and immediately, everyone would just start weeping. Just hearing that tone of voice. I hadn't even said anything at all. but just that put him in mind of them. So this is with our father. This is better?
Much better.
Okay. With our father, and I would say, and if you could think about him later, there was a lot of resemblance between them in some ways. Again, please, anytime, any questions, just jump up, raise your hand, speak out at any point. Some I have not so much to say about it. It's before my time, but it was a really quite a joyous, quite a beautiful looking, and to be with him. Many people would just immediately be attracted to him even then, and you could see the mood he was in. This particular photo we'll see later, him taking me to that same playground. When I was a little bit older. And if I'm going too fast or anything, also let me know. Several of you have seen photos of him. Later, he used to like to wear, we saw one earlier today, the cowboy hat, and he used to always love to wear cowboy hats. So this would still be in early 1950s, I would say. He's 1946 is his birth year. Yes, in New York City and Manhattan. And the city changed quite a bit over time. He's written a little bit, and I know from my experience, it was a tough. It was a tough place to grow up, and we had from very young age a lot of freedom, and we would run the streets. But that was not at all without risk and danger, for sure. I know in one place he talks about he would be coming home from school, and he had the choice of turning right on this way on the way home, and getting beaten up by this gang, or he could go that way and get beat up by that gang. And that was really the choice of it. It was quite a violent and challenging time in that way, but not at this age. Uptown, he called it Harlem, but it wasn't Harlem. And even especially reading, I'll say at different times. I mean, he was in the Upper West Side, and I was in Washington Heights later. And then later, when he got older, he moved to the Lower East Side. Lower East Side, like in the bad old days, for sure. I mentioned about the Harlem. He, especially in the Hare Krishna at SMU, in his autobiographical writing, he always, he was very strategic, and he always he was building. I don't mean artificially, but everything was for a purpose. And Harlem sounds a little tougher than the Upper West Side. But I read, in fact, that when Mother Laurie read that, he sent it to her and asked her for her comments, and she wrote back, she said, we didn't live there. We lived, in the Upper West Side, but he didn't change it at all. Because it had a certain... I used to live on 101st Street between West End and Riverside. I don't remember the exact street where they were there, and then they also moved to Queens later on. Kastuba Prabhu really knows his New York details like that. He could give like a Gurdjieff tour of New York City for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. I really had to show this picture. His first grade class. And one thing that I find very interesting about this, it's 1953, right? Look at how diverse that class is for 1953, right? There are children of every background, nationality, and color. What to mention how it is today. But that's the world, that we grew up in. And certainly by the time I was growing up, like my schools were overwhelmingly non-white, for sure. I was in a distinct minority being white there. Do you recognize him? Which? Third from the left on the back row. And he kind of stands out, I would say. You know, here's a closer look at that. And I mean, I think that really, to me, that captures what I imagined him to be. I did not know him myself at this age. But so many pictures, we've got that like inner glow and joyousness. Here's a few more from, I tried to keep these somewhat chronological order. Some have dates, some is just, I tried to eyeball, you know, the age, which comes next. This is in, and there'll be a few photos. We used to have, there was, we were part of a bungalow community, I guess, in New Jersey. It was Camp Midvale, it was called. And there were families there, and you'd go and spend a whole summer there. It was a formative place for us growing up. It was the countryside. It's only, I don't know, maybe a couple hours from Manhattan, but not so far. And so many things, I mean, we experienced and we learned about the woods, about nature. Our place was on a little dirt or gravel road. It was called Snake Den Road. And it was called that for a reason. And I certainly remember as we were walking, he and I walking just together, I was quite young, but it made a big impression of seeing copperheads, seeing rattlesnakes, and there was a like, I guess you'd call it a man-made, naturally fed pool, a large pool that was fed by a stream, but it had concrete and water moccasins in there. It was also, it was also heaven for us, though, to be out of the city, for sure. It was a communist camp, and our parents were communists. They were card-carrying communists, not just sort of sympathizing. And so there was no religion in our households. I mean, you know, religion was the opiate of the people. Maybe for some devotees growing up, there is some tension of coming from one religion to another religion. It was quite different. And a little later, I could speak to that, how they reacted. But that was in this place. This, for some reason, this was always my very favorite picture of him, the one I kept by my side. Oh yeah, yeah, it could very well be. It was a very big thing. Our father comes from Austria. He came from Austria via England to the United States. And I in that generation, especially for people of a Jewish background who had come from the Holocaust, many people just didn't talk about it. It was not a topic of discussion at all. And I know for myself, somehow without the words, I got the message not to ask the questions. And there was just so much pain in the background. I remember them saying that, I don't know what year this would have been.
Who's them?
My parents saying that, I don't know what year this would have been that it happened, but they were full, I mean, their ideal was the Soviet Republic, the Soviet dream. And at a certain point, rumors started coming out of Russia about Stalin. And when they found out that Stalin was really the monster that he was and not the hero of the revolution, their world fell apart in some ways. And that was, I mean, there's a whole history of that. It's now called red diaper babies, is what we were. But yeah, and in the 1950s, our father was coming home from work one day and was reading the newspaper. He was a printer. first of all, the U.S. government already had their eye on him when he came into the United States. He and a group of friends were on a list of undesirables. But he came in, but he was going home from work one day and read it was like a list. This is in the 50s during the Joseph McCarthy years, and he saw his name was on a list of suspected communists, and he didn't go home that day. He disappeared, he went under, not for so long, but just enough time that sort of the heat would die down a little bit, which it did. Yeah, he was a very strong trade unionist, and over time, their politics went from that to civil rights to the peace movement, with which they were very active. I'll talk more about Gurdjieff, but I'll say for me, they took me to every demonstration. We went to Washington, D.C., I guess it's 1963, so I would have been 7. They took me to Washington, D.C., to the March on Washington, and I was sitting on a father's shoulders just to the left of the reflecting pool when Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. They were quite involved in this. Yeah, little by little he's getting bigger. But it's like, you see all these pictures, it's that same, that same look. There's a certain happiness there at that time. This was sent out as a Christmas card, as part of our Christmas card. No. He loved animals to his own detriment. Animals. He, like wild animals, small animals. At that camp in Midvale once, he came too close to a skunk. And the skunk raised its tail and sprayed him. And now this is a little later because I remember it. I was very young, but I remember very vividly. I can't, the way, at least for me, remembering memories from youth sometimes are in flashes or in moments rather than narratives. And I remember him coming back and like just stinking, to high heaven. And we got, somehow, I wasn't at the shopping, but they must have bought out the area tomato juice. And there was something like tomato juice, I guess, takes away the smell. And we filled the bathtub with tomato juice. And he went into it, all the way into, there was a lot of tomato juice in there. And all the way in, because I remember seeing like just, his nose sticking out of the tomato juice. It was like a real lesson. And then later, he's already, after he's a young teenager at this point, he was in, I believe it was Central Park, but it was in a New York City park, and he was feeding a squirrel. And the squirrel bit him. And at that time, if you were bit by a squirrel, you got rabies shots. And those shots were not like one shot. They were these long needles. I don't know how many, 9 needles.
9 needles.
All around the stomach. So like I say, he was like fearless with his love of animals. And sometimes it, came back at him, I should say. A little bit older. His hairstyles are interesting too, I think. Mm-hmm. Like this looks so different, but yet there he is. Under the hair.
Under the hair.
On that side. Yeah. It's funny because I don't remember the birthmark. And it's not until later that until he shaved up, that I really remember it. I guess I was aware of it, but it's not in my memory.
It was under his hair.
Yeah. And he had a lot of hair, and more and more. as he grew older. This is a nice, another cowboy hat. But again, these country shots are all in that place in Midville, Wanakee Lake, New Jersey. I can't say so much because I was so much younger. But I only know from pictures that he had friends, and, and they seemed to be having like fun together. And they were boys, they were girls, they were different ethnic backgrounds. It was a real, and this place, also attracted a very wide variety of people. But it was the social and the politics that really kept it together. At one point, the place was attacked by the Ku Klux Klan, and they burned down one of the buildings as well. And then I've read in more recent years that it was under surveillance by the FBI for years, that they knew exactly what was going on. I know this is 1956. You'll also notice, I didn't remember, but look at the pictures, he seemed to like plaid shirts. There are quite a few plaid shirts through the years of this.
That vase and table are in constant use at our house to this day.
We still have those, yeah. Somehow they have survived the years. I know it was 1956 because that's me. And that's the year of my birth. As the moment I was born, our parents were a little older. Our father in particular was a little bit older than most fathers.
He's like 47 or 48.
Or 48, yeah, and so in his 50s then by the time I was of any consciousness. And from the moment I was born, he declared me as his own. He took possession of me. And I was told this, and I remember the toys, that when I was born, he gave me all of his stuffed toys. And he said to them, to parents, he said, I'm not a baby anymore. I'm not a little boy anymore. Now I'm all of 9 years old. But maybe 9 years old might be, for stuffed toys. But it also showed he was just so attached to me. It's hard to believe. I'm told he actually would change my diapers. Like, what 9-year-old is changing, babies' diapers like that? And he said he called me, really, for many years, Carly was my family name. And he said he's mine, and I remember them. There were 2 monkeys. One of the monkeys had like sort of a broken nose. There was an elephant, and those were my stuffed toys growing up. They had been his for sure. And that, again, our father. And you can see he's a little older, at this point. There are quite a few photos of me with him, and also like what a doting brother he was. Really looking after me. Our parents all worked full time as well. There are quite a few photos of like this, of him pushing me, him taking me to the park, like that, from a very young age. I think this one tells the story. Like, the way I'm looking at him, and this continued for years, I worshipped him. He could do no wrong. I looked up to him with so much love. Every picture there is of me with him, I have a look like this on my face. Every single one of them. Well, no, I look maybe 1, 2.
So he's like 11.
You can add up from there. Yeah.
11.
That's the only, the only way I know that. And again, this was, this would have been in that same place. I was so happy with him. This is a photo maybe some have seen before. This is Fort Tryon Park. Fort Tryon Park in Upper Manhattan. He used to take me there, and he would, I guess in this one it looks like he's coming down. He would take me to the top, and you could see the apartment houses in the background, and then he'd run around to the bottom and catch me on the bottom. And I always felt this was, in some ways, our eternal position of I'm coming down the slide and him catching me in his arms when I get to the bottom.
And he kept taking him to the top.
We would go over and over. This was the place.
I mean, the topmost. Like the topmost in the universe.
Oh, yeah. Same park, and so this you could see, May 1957. Yeah, so he was like 11, or May, almost 11. He looked a little chubby at this age, I think. This is June 1958, right? And again, like the look on my face, I'm just in heaven, just being in his lap, every single time.
His slippers are coming off.
Oh yeah. This showed earlier, so 1958, 1959, so he would have been 11, 12, and to me they look like linoleum cuts rather than wood cuts. It was certainly art was a big part of it, of both of our lives. Yeah, he made those. Yeah.
At the age of 11.
Yeah. We had, like, from a young age, we would go to the Y and take art classes. Like then there was in the family, there was a history of art. Art was really valued. There wasn't music so much, but art was a very, very big part of our lives for sure. So this is in Bear Mountain, New York, just north of New York City. What do you think? Your guess is as good as mine. It says, is that like 62? 62, I would have been about 6. January, so I would have been exactly 6 if it was 62. And we're on skates here. And this is where he taught me to skate. It was, at that time, it was quite a bit colder in the world. And at Bear Mountain, there's a lake there, and it would freeze over. The entire lake would freeze over. So you could go and skate. You know, in my child's memory, you could skate forever in one direction. I don't know how far it actually was, but you could really, really skate for some distance. And hockey, soccer, our father was from Austria. Those were his sports. Like, you know, the Winter Olympics, the skating. I didn't bring pictures of our father, but they would, from Vienna, they would strap skis to their bicycles and ride their bikes up to the mountains and go skiing in the mountains outside Vienna. Not sure. Not me and not him. and not our father. This could have been our father taking the picture. Actually, I think that's not unlikely, that just now that you ask, that just the three of us would go there And so he would have taken this picture. But I don't know who would have taken the other one. You know. I love this. I love this one. And again, I just feel like I can still feel his arms around me like that. He's so affectionate, so protective, so loving. You've maybe seen this. This is the photo that his high school graduation was used for his high school graduation. I believe his diploma might be at Rasi Kendra Prabhu's house, if I'm not mistaken. He's, handsome dude. I don't know if you could see, his hair was thick and actually very curly. And he would really have to comb or brush it to get it down. And you'll see some others later as he got older. So this is February 1964, and we were making snowmen together. I think I took this picture, because there was another one of me next to another snowman sort of on the other side. So 64, 47, 8, is that right? 18? 64? 17, right? Also February 1964. This is the period just shortly before he left New York.
Another plaid shirt.
Yeah, another plaid shirt, it's true. And it looks like the vase again, maybe in the corner, that vase that has survived. So this would have been shortly, I don't know if he was living on the Lower East Side at this time, but it would have been shortly before he left New York. Around the same period with our father. Yeah. Yes. From a particular perspective. Yeah. Yeah, it was framed in a particular way. I would say because our ages, for different reasons, that being part of it, but also just the difference in our ages, the man we knew as our father were quite different. Who he was when I was one age, who he was when he was at one age. It's sometimes hard, it's hard for me to know the reasons for our varying perspectives. I mean, there are many, but I think age is certainly one of them.
There was no conflict between the two mothers either.
Yeah. He's reading Mad Magazine. That was, I loved him there. And he had a stack of Mad magazines. And I would go through them like anything. It was a really... Now this, to me, that's an interesting shot. He looks so, and some of these are, quite some time apart. But again, this is, I think, it's possible it's either right before he left New York or he left New York and then at one point he came back, I remember. And so it could have been in a short visit before he left again. But it looks so different. His hair color is so different. He's very slim here. And he did some ads with a kind of a beatnik kind of a style to him. He had like dark glasses on, and didn't really look like him, but it was a role, that he played for these. He would, so he left New York around that time. I would have thought it was like 1967 or so, but I'm kind of guesstimating. And when he left, he left. I mean, and even in New York, we had the run of the city. We were very independent. We really had a lot of freedom. There was no sense of danger at all out there. It was there, but it was, and I think also for that generation, especially of parents who came from immigrant parents from Europe. It's interesting because I would imagine that there is something similar today, but coming from different parts of the world, where they didn't have a clue what our life was like. They did not know what it was like on the streets of New York. They were really quite naive in some sense, and we didn't share a lot of that either. I could psychoanalyze and think of reasons, but I know they did not know much of what we did or what we went through. Yeah. It was just outside their world. They were working, and we were out there. And, by 12 years old, I know I had the run of the entire city. I was on subways. I was going into other boroughs. It was there were no restrictions like that. I made some notes I want to mention. So once he left, I can't say for sure what his contact with them, but he would stay in contact with me by postcards. And so he wrote, the first I'm remembering, it was a postcard with I wish I had it, Diego Rivera mural on the front of it from Mexico. And he went, and it was always like, "Dear Carly, I am so-and-so, here I am, here's one thing that's going on, how much can you write on a postcard, love." I didn't mention, love Tommy. He was always Tommy in our home. To me, he was Tommy for years, until years later. So from Mexico was the first. I remember one thing he wrote was he was in and we could probably date it, I don't know where he was, but he was in a hotel when there was an earthquake. And he described how the hotel was shaking in the earthquake. I also know he went to Cuernavaca, and he went there to study pottery. I believe, so pottery was definitely a craft he was into. I believe, I somehow have in my memory that he might have also studied a little bit in upstate New York. Alfred is quite a famous ceramics school. But he went to Mexico particularly to study ceramics, pottery. And it didn't last so long. And I'll say that, that even then, he had very high standards for himself. And if he could not do something excellent, I don't want to say if he couldn't be the best, because I didn't think of it as a competitive thing, but if he couldn't really excel at something, he would drop it and move on. And that was the case with ceramics. Now, he was a superb flute player. And not that at my 9 years old I could judge that so well, but I loved when he played flute. And I would ask him to play flute all the time. He especially excelled classical music and jazz music. And he would play in the streets and put his hat out. And today they call it busking. They didn't call it that back then. It was just, passing the hat. He would play in Washington Square Park, Tompkins Square Park. And again, this is a little vague, and if I correct me, that he was playing one day and nobody was around him. And he was wondering, how come nobody was there? And he heard music coming in the background. And it was the devotees who were there. But he did not, he met devotees, but he did not see Srila Prabhupada at that time, is my understanding. But so there was sort of it wasn't the right time exactly. I've heard that he really excelled as a jazz flutist, and even played in some of the jazz clubs in New York. And what I was told was that he played with Rahsaan Roland Kirk, who was a renowned jazz sax player in particular, and a very demanding one, who you really had to know your stuff to play with him. Yeah. San Miguel de Allende. Okay. That's right. And San Miguel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very nice. Oh, many summers as well. So I remember the next postcard I received was from Morning Star Ranch, which was a commune north of San Francisco. I think it was something 60 miles north of San Francisco. And he wrote, this one I remember very clearly. He wrote, "Dear Carly, I am living in a tree. Love, Tommy." And I was a little hippie, and I just thought he had reached the pinnacle of life. Like, you could not do any better than that. Now, he did not write to me that he was living naked in a tree, but if he had, I would have been, just over the moon. And as it was, I think I told some friends, like, my brother lives in a tree. Yeah, which was, you really couldn't do better than that at that point in time, for that culture. I didn't say, I'm sure by this time he saw how his hair could get long. If he did not comb or brush it, it was very curly. It would just come out. It would start to come out like that. And it led to a little bit of tension with parents, and who did not think that was respectful. But anyway, he wrote from there, and that was very exciting for me. The next postcard I received, I can't even remember what was on the front of it, was from San Francisco. And he wrote, it might have even been Carlet by that point, because it would be 1968, so I would have been 12. And he wrote, I can't remember the exact words, but it was like, I'm, with the Hare Krishna devotees. Love, Tamal Krishna. I knew nothing else about it. I had no idea what was going on, who was even like this person, Tamal Krishna. As I said, I loved him to no end. If he did something, I wanted to do it. I'm going to backtrack just a second so I don't forget it entirely. When he would take me to, I'll get back to that. We would walk to that playground, and there was an ice cream store on the way. And I would get, he would take me for ice cream, and that was became a thing for us, of him taking me for ice cream. And there are some stories about that, or memories that I have. But in particular, I would remember he would get me a cone, and he would get a pint of ice cream for himself. And he would eat that pint of ice cream, like it was enough, and I was in awe. I was in total awe. Like, how he was superhuman. How could he eat all that ice cream at once? I was so impressed. Also, especially because our father was older and didn't grow up with sports like baseball or basketball, it was Tommy who taught me those things. And he taught me, how to play, how to catch, like that. I remember getting a baseball glove and him showing me how to oil it up and bang a baseball into it over and over and over again, how to put a ball in it and then strap it around with a rubber band to build the pocket in the ball, but those kind of things. And also, he taught me, even at that age, how to walk the street. how to be a boy in New York. You know, how to stand up, how to be self-assured in walking, not look people in the eye, but to make a presence, to make one's own space as you walk down the street. It reminds me of much later, the first time we went to Vrindavan. And he said to me, he said, with the monkeys, he said, don't look at them just quickly enough that they know that you know that they're there. And then, you know, then go. Do not be looking them in the eye. Of course, he always carried a stick with him when he was walking, for the monkeys in particular. And I'm jumping around a little here, but this would have been 1999. And I'll get to this, 1999 in Vrindavan, and he and I were walking in Raman Reti. And he said, like, he loved to walk in that direction, you know, on the other side of the Parikrama Marg from the temple and there. And at that time, it was dust, still dirt. Everything was dirt paths. Nothing was paved. And there was some Brijbasi boys who were playing with a ball and a tire. They were like rolling the tire and throwing the ball around. And he had a wooden cane, you know, just with some carving on it. And he took the cane and he flipped it around and held it by the bottom, and he went like this. And he had the boys like pitch the ball into him, and he would swing at it. And he was a New Yorker. I mean, and he was very, not attached to that, but he was proud of that identity. And we would talk a lot about that, what it meant to be a New Yorker and what life was like and how New Yorkers are the best in the world. And, you know, like we were really, and I think if you know, think about his personality all through the years, you can see there was a lot of New Yorker in him. Some of it was his personality, but the environment we grew up in certainly played a big part in that. Any questions before I get back? Please continue. Yeah. Relationship with parents. I can't answer that so clearly. I'll just say like that from my perspective. I saw love. There was a lot of love, but then there was also problems later. It would be hard for me to say that. I would say that he was not rebellious in that sort of way. I remember one particular incident, though, that he was already living on his own, and he came to our apartment, and he had his hair all out, and they were really upset about that. And they argued, like, you know, loud fighting argument about that, whether that was disrespectful to our father. And they argued about that for hours. I was so upset by that. I retreated into my room and onto my bed. I was just crying on my bed. I heard them yelling in the other room. I mean, if he's 18, I'm only 9 years old. I'm not, and it was a real conflict for me. I felt like I was being torn in those two directions. And after those fights, if the fight was over, though, he came back to me and sat on my bed and consoled me and asked if I wanted to go out for ice cream, actually. Just that. I was conflicted. And it was like late at night by that point, and I couldn't stay and I couldn't go. I couldn't choose between them. It was impossible for me. And so I didn't go. And I think I regretted that for a good 20 years, at least. I did not put that behind me. It was, still one of those conflicted moments for certain in my life. And it wasn't until 1996 or 7 that I could speak with him about that.
But he remembered that.
Yeah.
He said he didn't remember much, but he did remember that moment.
They spoke together
Yeah,
about
we
that.
talked about it a little.
So he writes to me, signed Tamal Krishna. And I was like, wow, what's that? And somehow I made the connection, or I don't even know. I went to Brentano's bookstore on 8th Street, so I'm 12 at that time. And by 12 years old, I was working. I had a job, not full-time job, but I had some way to make money, and it was the first books I bought. I went and bought a Macmillan. Went and bought this copy of Bhagavad Gita, and I bought it from Brentano's bookstore on 8th Street, which was, at that time in New York City, there were not all these bookstores. And as I knew, I think there was the one sort of philosophy, Buddhist bookstore, a little bit more uptown, and there was Brentano's on 8th Street. And I got that. I got a book of fiction and a book of poetry, Coney Island of the Mind by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, I remember it was. And that next summer, I was kind of, I would get sent away to camp every summer. Parents were working. I would go off to camp from a very, very young age. I was away 2 months every year. I was away from my parents in Vermont, New Hampshire. This was in Pennsylvania. And I'll just say I loved it. I didn't miss my parents. I wrote to them when I was told I should write to them. That was about it. I think they would visit me once in the middle of the summer, but I loved it. And at this point, I was a little too old to be a camper, but too young to be an employee. So I was doing ceramics at the camp and a few other things, helping in the arts and crafts area. And so there were apple trees there, and I climbed up into an apple tree and read the Bhagavad Gita. It did not occur to me for years that he lived in a tree, I climbed up into a tree, that there was some connection there. And we were talking the other day about what it's like for people to first come into contact, to first read Bhagavad Gita like this. And this is the, somewhat abridged old Macmillan. And I remember I read it, and it was like, oh yeah, fine. I just accepted it like that. I didn't have any question. There was no conflict. I wasn't thinking religion, Krishna consciousness. I was just reading it, and I accepted it as verbatim. I never thought, and we had no other religion, there was no conflict that way. I just bought right into it. And at some point over the next year, and again, I'm not sure if there was any information in the back of the book, or somehow maybe I got it back to Godhead. I really don't remember or know. But I got on a subway when I went back to New York, and I just pulled this off the internet, and took the subway. It must have been an hour and a half into Brooklyn. You got off the train, and there was a bit of a walk from the train. I was all the way up on the 200th Street at that point in Manhattan, so all the way down through Manhattan into Brooklyn. I don't even know that I'd ever been in Brooklyn in my life. I mean, it was another country as far as I was concerned. And again, for a New Yorker, for a Manhattanite, New York was Manhattan. There's Manhattan, there's New York, and there's the boroughs. And there was no need to go out there whatsoever. This is Henry Street, the 439 Henry Street Temple. That was my first experience with the temple of devotees. And you'd walk up there's a brownstone, we'd walk up the steps, and at the platform right at the door, there would be a woman who would put a tilak on you as you walked in the door. And maybe it's my imagination, I can't say, but from my memory, I can still feel her finger on my forehead. I mean, it was such a vivid moment for me. And there's some things about the inside the temple I remember, some things I don't remember. I remember the music, the dancing. I was like 12, 13. I thought the girls were really pretty, and they dressed like beautifully. I remember that. I remember that we sat in the hallway, back against the wall for prasad. And I'm sitting there taking prasad, and there's a young devotee next to me, and he's preaching to me, telling me about Bhagavad Gita and the philosophy. And I was so full of myself. I was such a New York kid. Like, ridiculous. And I remember thinking, like, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. Like, he doesn't even understand the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, and like, what, how arrogant a New York kid was I? But I remember thinking like this. And I went back twice at least. I don't even think 3 times. And although he spoke with me, there was never like any attempt to bring me in. No one asked who I was. There was nothing like that I can remember. And really I just left, and that was it. I didn't go back. Please. Oh.
I was there, but I have to say, that's not close to the...
Is it not?
No.
Okay, then I'll move on. Thank you. I did go, it was at Henry Street that I went. I'm sorry. I just today I tried to pick a picture, and it said it was the address. It was incorrect. I apologize. Thank you. And when we were in Vrindavan in 1999, I was telling this story to Devi Shakti Mataji, and she said, "Oh yeah, that was my service." And there was, I think, one other woman who also did that. And so it was either Devi Shakti or the other devotee who was doing that. And so to meet her like these years later, it was pretty wild. But it never grabbed me. There was no thought. And I just sort of went off into hippie lifestyle. I don't know what else to call it. All the things of that life, and going to college then. I picked out a few pictures of this time, like after he left, and I had no contact with him whatsoever. After this postcard, the next contact I had was in 1978. So it's 10 years or so later that it was the next time we connected. But I wanted to just show these. I thought there was a couple of interesting points about the photo. So in this, for instance, well, he's not shaved up, obviously. It's before. And does he have a bead bag?
You can see his hair is a little frizzy in this one.
Yeah, you could see that a little more. He has a bead bag. We have that bead bag in our home now. Well, also the pre-initiation one. But look how he's sitting with his back to Srila Prabhupada. Almost like Prabhupada, he's almost oblivious to him not there. Of course, that's Yamuna Devi sitting next to him. And it just struck me that, I don't know if it was just some months later that this would never have been his situation, just to show that development. I'm sorry. Why he didn't? No, we talked about it. It's because he was a full-on devotee. It was as simple as that.
He told me that he was absorbed. Mm-hmm. Like it was his whole life, his whole everything.
I would also say, though, and again, I'm moving ahead a little bit, that when I first started coming here in, I think it was maybe 1996, that we had a long day. I was staying across the street at Indranila and Radha Vinod's. They were away at that time, so I had the whole house, and he and I had that whole house together. So he would come over, and we spent hours and hours talking. And we had not spoken since 1978. So this is, Oh, no, I'm sorry. We spoke on the phone. You're right. In person. You're right. And but that was the time, like, we just really opened our hearts. I think we were, and even he was crying most of the time. And one of the things, he apologized to me over and over and over for leaving me. That's the way he put it. And I never thought of it like that. Again, we're quite independent, and I should have brought it with me, but I'd like actually written a poem about him, I remember. And it started, "How many rains on your home in Bombay since those winds that blew east, west, over the Hudson?" Because he would take me to the Hudson where that's where we would especially play football and run around. That was a place for us. So he was always in my heart, and I always just thought of him out there in the world. And that's what you did. You went out in the world. I just never thought twice about it. But he was very regretful, and particularly because of some of his own experiences, he knew what it was like to be left behind. And he just felt terrible. And I just like, please, that was never in my heart. I never was hurt by that. I was very happy to be together again. Here's a sort of in-between picture. I don't know who took it. I went through the archives, I guess, at North Carolina. There are thousands of photos there. And one day
It was more than one
it was
day.
1 week, 1 month, I went through every single one of them. And just looking for photos of him. And this was one I saw. It's sort of unusual. He's got the short hair. It's an unusual look for him, I think. But it's him. And then, his initiation with Vishnu Jan. Shortly after. Maybe you've seen this photo. I wanted to pull this out, and it's one of a series, and it might have been shown this morning or one very similar to it. But just my thought about it was, like, I don't know all of these devotees, and maybe someone knows the woman, the second woman, and the man all the way to the right. But there's Mukunda, there's Yamuna, there's Tamal, there's Vishnu Jan, and this is the Harinam party. And these are like, the ISKCON all-stars of all time in certain respects. And people were just passing them by, like it could be anyone. But, these moments are historic moments. You can only imagine what that kirtan, sounded like. It must have been incredible. Two answers. He's asking our parents' reactions. Yeah, 2 answers to that. First, they were happy he wasn't doing drugs. That was, they were not into religion, but it was like that was the least of things for certain. That was a healthy lifestyle, fine. But he did give our father a Bhagavad Gita, and our father read as far as the first chapter, and as some people misread the Gita, he saw it as a pro-war, propounding war, because, get up and fight. And he says, I cannot abide. By that point, they were deeply into the anti-war movement. I cannot abide by any religion that supports war. And that was just the end of that. But they were not unhappy about it, I would say, my understanding.
Well, no, the mother said that they were happy because it was a clean lifestyle.
Yeah.
People don't remember what it was like back then. People were dying of overdoses all the time. So.
Yeah. This is London. So we know, and again, these skip around, and it'll just be a few more of these archive photos. But this is early days in London. Okay. Early days in London. And you've maybe seen those photos of him with Srila Prabhupada in the snow and in the rain holding the umbrella as they're taking a walk. One thing I love about this one is just the look on his face looking at Srila Prabhupada. I mean, there's just so much love there. And we don't see too many photos, maybe you know some of them, of Srila Gurudev in connection with George, in connection with Radha Krishna Temple in the musical sense. But he was there as part of it, and when they went on tour, he was also there. But here's one of him with them. And here's some of these are part of it. You might know the picture better from, it would be Mukunda on the right side playing piano. And since he's facing away, he's not so prominent, recognizable in this photo.
But you can see his spot on his head.
Yeah, that's right. When you're looking at photos and trying to identify him, there's an identifier, often. Thank you for asking. When we met with Mukunda Maharaj in Australia in
2017?
He told us about it. And
2010.
I've heard this, I think, yesterday from someone else also. He was coming from Morning Star, and the temple, I guess, was just off the corner, and they would hear him playing flute before he turned the corner. And he says, "Oh, here comes Tom." It was Tom the flute player. How does someone else call it? Tom the flute? Flauta? No, they'd say he was Tom the flute player, and they knew he was coming before he got there. Skipping 1978, our father, yeah. Great question. I'm speaking second, third hand. That at Morning Star, he was living in a tree, and there's the story of him and Vishnu Jan Swami playing instruments with each other tree to tree, and that's how they met. They were there. Also, Madhavisa Prabhu was there, and that Prabhupada did come there, and they were living naked in trees, indeed. And he came, and there was there was a circle of them. I don't know if they put their clothes on when Srila Prabhupada came or not. They did not have clothes on. So there's Prabhupada speaking with this circle of naked, dirty hippies living in trees. And this is the best America has to offer. I mean, these are the greatest devotees of the time. And so all close to Srila Prabhupada. I mean, we speak about him on the Lower East Side dealing with the crazies and the junkies and the violence there. This is what he was dealing with there. The next time I heard from him was in 1978. Our father passed away in 1977, the same year as Srila Prabhupada. So he lost two fathers in a sense in the same year. And although he did not see them equally, for sure, he somehow got hold of me. For the life of me, I have no idea how. I was living on 101st Street between West End and Riverside, and I don't know how he found out that I was there. But somehow he did, and somehow he contacted me and asked me to come to meet him. He was at the 55th Street Temple. And I went there, and he showed me around the temple. We sat, I guess, I don't know if it was a cafeteria, perhaps, like that, but it was a big room with tables and chairs, and we were talking. I don't remember everything about it. I remember that at the time, I had already been a vegetarian, but then was eating fish again, and he said, I had to stop eating fish, and I had to stop smoking so much pot. Those were his two instructions, basically, at the time. And we talked about our father. And at that time, his attitude, and he wrote this once also, in terms of that our father had passed away, which father is that? I've had so many fathers. And he told me, he said that our father wasted his life. And he had just passed away. I adored our father. I looked up to him very, very much. I really was turned off by that. And actually, again, in 1996, that was one of the things he apologized to me for. He said, I never should have said that. We don't often hear of him apologizing, but he certainly did, and he had a lot of apologies for me on that day.
And in the 10 years he was gone, and they were, and Kalachandji was with his father. His father was a leader in the community, the head of his union, the head of his co-op. He would bring groceries to sick people everywhere. I mean, he was such a generous, compassionate person, a real leader.
Yeah,
So,
hundreds of people came to his funeral.
Yeah.
And not like just people who knew him from his life and leadership. And that was it. And then we separated again. I don't know that you can read these, so the next time I'll read them though. August 1st, 1985. This is the next I heard from him. And how did you send him an invite? I don't know. You had books that had Krishna. See, at this time, I just thought he was a monk in the Eastern tradition. And we had some books in the house, and I think I just looked at an address, maybe it was a New York address, and I sent a wedding invitation. I figured maybe it would get there. I don't know. Somehow,
It's 6:45.
oh well, somehow it reached him. My brother Carl, please accept my greetings. I beg to thank you for your letter dated July 5th, 1985. Congratulations to you and your new wife Stella on the celebration of your wedding. Unfortunately, it will not be possible for me to attend. I pray that this marriage will bear fruit for both of you and that you will find both material and spiritual well-being within it. I am sending you a copy of my book, Servant of the Servant, as a wedding gift. I hope that you will both enjoy reading it. I shall always be glad to hear from you both, and God willing, to meet you as well. Again, congratulations on you both, and hoping this meets you well. Yours affectionately, Tamal Krishna Goswami. And his letters, he would have them, he would dictate them and have them typed. And this one was by Renuka Devidasi, RDD. Several of them were. And it's interesting, this one is it was always my dear brother, often my dear brother Carl, yours affectionately. In January of 1989, at that time we had moved to Santa Barbara, and Shraddhanjali was looking for a spiritual community. And she was sort of going, they call church shopping. And we went around and tried different places, and one day we went into the local health food store. And the way health food stores, they had like the bulletin board by the door, and there was just a little piece of paper like this with a picture of Srimati Radharani, and it said Love Feast, and the date and the address of the Love Feast. I saw it. I was like, I knew what it was. Actually, we had Bhagavad Gita, we had a few volumes of Bhagavatam in the house, we had Back to Godheads, but we were not practicing in any way and didn't even have any consciousness whatsoever. But so we went to this program. And at that point, and throughout these next few years, we never liked to advertise who we were. We didn't like to say who we were. I did not contact him to say we were going to programs. We knew that if this was going to take hold, it had to be us. It could not be for him. And also, we didn't like to be, I'm not wild about this. We didn't like to be treated differently. I don't know how to say it. We're very happy to be sitting with you like that. This is in Santa Barbara, California. And it was a program, His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj was coming up from Los Angeles with Sarvatma Prabhu and Ram Shraddha Prabhu. And they were doing every few weeks, weekly programs, and they would also, after we started going, they would call in advance and engage my wife in cooking, helping with the preparations.
It didn't work out well.
She's not a cook. I'm not insulting, I'm describing. And this was January 14th, 1989. Please accept my greetings. I am writing to you having heard from some devotees that they met you at a Krishna conscious program in Santa Barbara. They told me that you are quite interested in Krishna consciousness, and this has prompted me to write. I would be happy to hear your realizations regarding our philosophy and way of life. Please take the time to write me, and I would be very happy to reply. I am sending you by separate email a copy of a new book I have written, which I hope you enjoy reading, hope in this, etc. Yours affectionately. I should say that not long after these, I would get a letter saying, "Oh, I wonder if you've read my book yet. What do you think about it? Like, what page are you on?" You know, that kind of thing. It was not. I'm going to move. I feel the time is getting short, actually. I don't want to miss this. I don't know. I will say.
Was it the play?
Then
Was it the
that
play?
makes sense. I will say that he told me that he was most proud of that book of all of his books. He felt that was his best book. Yeah.
It was 1989.
This
Yeah,
was, but
this.
so it could have
But
easily
he
been.
was, yeah, he
Absolutely.
had a book laying around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. He was very, very, very proud of that book. And I'm saying he thought it was his best book years later, after having come out with several others. Yeah. The Jagannath Priyanataka. Yeah. And I'll read some of this letter. This was a very big letter for us. May 27th, 1989, ISKCON Dallas, my dear brother Carl. Please accept my warmest greetings and offer the same to your good wife Stella and devotee daughter Liana. So our daughter was one?
She was 2.
2 at this point, Liana. I should say, when we went to that program, we walked in the door. We had never been to any kind of program before in our lives with her in tow. And it was a screen door. We walked in the door, and there were like quite a few, not this many, but devotees sitting on the floor like this. And she like wove
She
her
just
away.
ran in, like and ran. Nobody was sitting down. It was all people standing up, so it was all legs. And she disappeared behind the legs. And I'm like, you know, and I couldn't find her, but she was in front of Gornitai jumping up and down.
She'd gone up to the front and jumping up
Actually
and down.
jumping up and down and trying to reach them. And it was my first indication that this might be something.
I beg to thank you for your letter, etc. Before beginning, I wish to explain to you that this letter is typed only because I prefer to do most of my writing by dictation. Please do not consider my secretary as an intrusion. If anything, dictation allows me. I had already, we had a brotherly relationship, and also we're New Yorkers. So I would give him a hard time about things. And one of the things I gave him a hard time about was like, what, you can't even write your own letters to your own brother. You have a secretary to do this, you put a stamp on it. I was really like laying it on him. So he, politely defends himself and explains himself. I was extremely pleased, even deeply moved, to read the contents of your letter. I had written to him at that point expressing how much it all meant and how much he meant to us. There is no limit to Krishna's wonder. I had no idea that my actions, words, and writing would be so influence your life. I'm very indebted to Srila Prabhupada for making me a devotee and therefore allowing me to fulfill the obligation of an older brother. When we were very young, I used to play with you and keep you entertained. There was natural love and affection between us, but now I feel a great hankering to extend that love and affection in a real spiritual sense. In you, I find the one family relation with whom I can genuinely share Krishna consciousness. I only learned of our father's demise by telephone. This is where he explains that. As I have deepened my Krishna consciousness, I have come to think of the father. I can only think of Srila Prabhupada, because what he did, because he did for me what a father is really meant to do. He showed me the way to perfect my life and put an end to the suffering of repeated birth and death. Even more, he has given me the opportunity to taste the greatest happiness of devotional life. In every birth, we get a father and mother, but only as human beings are we offered the opportunity to gain Krishna. Now I can understand that we must have been related from a previous birth, and thus Krishna has placed us in such a close family relationship. Now we must utilize this to advance spiritually. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, as well as Srimad Bhagavatam, you will be able to read of many wonderful examples of brothers who engage together in the service of Krishna. The 5 Pandava brothers immediately come to mind. And of course, the 3 brothers, Sri Rupa, Sri Sanatan, and Sri Anupama, the dearmost disciples of Lord Chaitanya. These are the most exalted of personalities before whom we are nothing but specks of dust. Yet I pray that we may both follow in their footsteps and prove a credit to Srila Prabhupada. Though I have not met Stella and Liana, I can feel that they are both intelligent and soft-hearted souls, just like your good self. He tells about some of his travels, and says, I am very impressed with your academic achievement of a PhD. I was teaching in Santa Barbara. I spent 40 years as professor of English and later teaching Bhagavad Gita. I know that it must have been a great deal of effort and wish to offer you my congratulations on this accomplishment. How will you utilize this in Krishna's service? The science of devotion teaches us that everything must be used in the service of the Lord. Whereas other spiritual paths recommend renunciation of all things material, Lord Chaitanya has taught the meaning of yukta vairagya, or true renunciation. And he goes into that. Of course, academic qualifications in themselves are not a criterion for success in Krishna consciousness. One most important is one's devotion. In regard, I might offer the suggestion to you and Stella to make a planned program of increasing your devotional practice. And he goes on like that. There is so much I could write, for the subject of Krishna consciousness is endless. At least if you receive some of the above tapes in literature, he goes what I should listen to, Nectar of Devotion, contact Yudhishthir Das. If you receive some of the above, it will be a way of extending Krishna consciousness, etc. I'd like to hear from you at your earliest convenience and only request patience in receiving the reply, as it takes 2 months. With affection, your brother, Tamal Krishna Goswami. I already talked about in 1989, we had been going to programs, and in 1989, we were visiting New York, and we went to have darshan of the deities at the Brooklyn Temple. And we walk into the Brooklyn Temple. At the door, you say, he greeted us?
A nice young gentleman opened the door, and it was, yeah.
He opened the door, and we said, well, have you ever heard of someone named Tamal Krishna Goswami? We had no idea of his position.
Like who he was in the movement. We just thought he was a devotee.
We didn't have a clue. And in fact, I said, do you know, is he still alive? And where he might be? And
we knew he was alive, but
I remember wondering like that. But anyway, you should believe her, for sure.
he didn't ask. He did not ask that.
And so the devotee says, well, may I ask who's asking? And so we say who we were, and his jaw dropped. His jaw dropped. And he says, actually, he's upstairs. Wait, don't move. Don't leave, don't move. He runs upstairs and comes down, and he says, he must have said Srila Gurudev is upstairs. He said, come back he wants to see you, come back in 1 hour. And so we go, we take a couple showers, we're like really, we had, how old is Liana at that point?
I mean, she was a little over 2.
2.
Just a toddler. But we tried to get dressed up.
And he brought us upstairs. I'll say now that devotee is Kastuba Prabhu.
It was his initiation day.
It was his initiation day, the initiation day of Vladini Shakti and Gandiva, and one other devotee whose name I don't remember. And we went up, and we walked in the room upstairs, and there's Srila Gurudev, like this, in that classic pose.
Straight.
Danda,
the danda.
As straight as the danda itself. Flanked by 2 like tall brahmacharis, also like this. 2 pillars next to him.
It could have been intimidating, but the first thing I did was raise up Liana from the floor and go, "Here's your niece."
Yeah, and I went right up and I gave him a big hug. And it was like hugging a wooden board. He did not know how to take it. He was not used to this. He was not comfortable with this whatsoever.
I thought at the time that he probably shouldn't have had the two brahmacharis around to see
Right,
the way
right.
we were behaving.
And they did, and then he did send them out, and we did have a talk together. And one of these, he saw Liana, he says, whatever you do, don't have any more children. That was the first instruction he ever gave us. Don't have any more children. I will say, I think 10 months later, our next
It was
child
11 months
our
later,
next child
James was born.
So it was not only his first instruction, but his first instruction that we disobeyed. And again, this was another a big apology that he gave me when we got back together. He said, I never should have said that. And by then, and then especially later as he got to know our children, he saw that actually our children have helped us in our Krishna consciousness. And as a family, that was a very important element. But this is where he was at that time. And we stayed for the initiation as well. In 1992, I received the Garuda Prabhu's collect phone call you had got. Is that who? No, but you received a collect phone call. So my phone call was not collect. I received a call, though, from Sarvatma Prabhu, who simply said, somebody wants to speak with you, call back.
In those days, it cost a lot of money to call from Iowa
Yeah.
to California.
Long distance, yeah. And that was I was like, what do you mean call back? If you want to talk to me, you call me.
In those days, there was a signal that we would give each other to call back from New York.
Oh, really? Huh. Right. So anyway, I did call back, and I found that, and it was him. And we spoke for 5 hours on the phone. And, I mean, I don't know, and Shraddhanjali kept going to get me glasses of water and, just trying to sustain me through this phone call.
His ears were hot.
This
and he
was
kept
really...
switching.
This was the beginning of our later relationship, for sure. And one of the things he said was that he was visiting with Hridayananda Maharaj, and that was at that time considering what school to go to, like that. And it was important for him that I had this educational background, that I was a professor, that I had a PhD. He dropped out of college in the 60s, out of Queens College. He said it was because that his professors were not walking the walk, that he could not respect them like that. He dropped out of college. I don't know. I don't know if that's how he felt at the time, or if this is how he felt 20 years later, or 40 years later, about what he had done previously. But we talked, and he said that if we are going to form a relationship together, we'd have to serve together. That we had to do savor together, and that he had begun a draft of the sequel to Li Guangxu novel, what eventually became Back Home. Would I help him with that? And I said, yeah, of course. It was classic Srila Gurudev. He we're going to work on this together. This is our service together. He never did more work on that book. I don't think he had any intentions of continuing. He wanted to engage me to do that, and that would be our connection, though. So in 1995, he asked me to work, and he says, hearing of Stella's illness, he felt guilty. I wonder when I'll get the opportunity to return to completing the manuscript. He was very busy. I may change somewhat based on my experiences at SMU. He had decided to go to SMU. Regarding the studies, has been extremely valuable for me in many ways. I received a very especially warm welcome from all the professors who have gone out of their way to accommodate me there, practically as if I were their peer. And he says, one of the classes, Problems of Philosophy of Religion, requires 10 essays to be written in the course of them. I am seriously considering publishing them as a book. Topics include religious experience, etc. Would you be interested in seeing a sample? If I decide to publish, would you be willing to help with the editing? I'd be very pleased and grateful if you would. He's in Dallas. With much affection, Tamal Krishna Goswami. And I started this is when I started coming to Dallas. And this was my first visit. I was staying, as I say, across the street. And he would come over. As it turned out, he expected to be doing those essays, but at that point he had also done the papers that became Hare Krishna at SMU. And he brought them over, and he handed them to me, and he said, here they are, make a book. And I did it. I showed him like the first one. He was happy with it. And throughout Hare Krishna at SMU and Reason and Belief as well, he did not even, as far as I know, he did not even look at my work. He said, let me know when it's done. The Reason and Belief was especially challenging because he wanted the papers to become chapters in a book. And in both cases, he had me write an introduction to them, but also he wanted me to adjust them so they would flow together, and that required some writing. I had never edited a book in my life. This was totally new to me, and he threw me into the fire. And I was really thinking, I think for many of us, his foresight and the way he would engage us was not just for the moment, but was for how to sustain us in Krishna consciousness the rest of our lives. And I came to understand at that time that he was training me. And I would say he was training me. Remember his last Vyasa Puja here in Dallas, how almost his entire class was glorifying the spiritual masters of all the devotees in the room who were not his disciples. And I understand in later years that he was training me to serve his godbrothers in separation. And indeed, over years, I'm not saying this to my credit, certainly but his, I've had the greatest fortune to work with Bhakti Charu Swami, Mukunda Das Goswami, Harisari Prabhu, Ayendra Prabhu, Vaisheshika Prabhu, Bhakti Vigyan Swami, Devamrita Swami, Mahatma Prabhu, and many others, a dozen others. And for the last 25 years, more than anyone, our dear most spiritual master is Holiness Giriraj Swami. I always heard him like giving his famous sauce, and if you go somewhere and you have some good sauce, you want that sauce. And I got to feel kind of jealous because I understood that when he gave you the sauce, it's because he cared about you, that you mattered, But he was, I haven't said this, but maybe you've gotten it. He was always sweet, loving, kind, affectionate. I never saw any other side of him. In the Reason and Belief, somebody wrote to him. He wanted me to make it a book. And I used a particular citation system. But in between two of the chapters, I treated it, at first it was not even chapters, it was just one flowing. And I broke it into chapters, and I forgot to start the citations over again in the next chapter. And he called me up, I'm in my office at the university, and he called me up, and first time in my life. He was like, what were you thinking? You know, how could you possibly do this? Nobody could understand who the author was. I don't know what you were doing. And he just laid it on me. And he did not see. I'm in my office. The grin was from ear to ear. I was so happy that finally he cared enough to give me the sauce. And it was one of the top moments of my life. He hangs up. I'm happy as anything. 1 minute later, I get a call from Sarvabhauma Prabhu. Srila Gurudev is so sorry. He really, he really loves your work. He thinks you're doing great. He's sorry he was so heavy with, and or they say, the smile turns into a frown. And I was just like, I had maybe 1 minute of relishing the sauce before he just tore it away from me. It was the only time in my life he was ever in any way hard with me at all. Dear Carl, this is now March 1998. Thank you for the update. The book looks like it's on schedule. Thanks to your devoted and fervent walk. Please excuse me for reading about myself. I feel greatly fortunate to be blessed with such a fine, talented, and loving brother. You have turned out to be our Father's greatest gift to me. I thank him again and you again and again. I have already sent off the Prabhupada essay. So Satyaraj is in corrections. Enjoy the conference. I was at a academic conference in Chicago in the big town. I hope it won't be too windy. With much love, your brother.
So notice how he would end the letters are becoming more and more
affectionate.
lovey.
And willing to say, like, love. Really express that. 98, in September, Lord Carl, reading your letters is a real pleasure. More than this, it is the only semblance of any family life of the worldly sort I have left. What makes it so pleasurable is that your devotion elevates whatever you do beyond anything mundane. Thus, Krishna is allowing me the happiness of family affection without any of the normal material entanglements. I thank both Krishna and yourself for this, and our Father too, for he had a real part to play as well. Short and sweet, from Italy, your brother Tamal Krishna Goswami. And I always, the nice thing about emails is that he typed them. I kind of love that. It wasn't somebody else. And then we started coming down as a family. And that was also, this is us in a room upstairs. Us together. I wore this, I remember it was a Vyasa Puja in Houston the day before the Vyasa Puja. I didn't have dhoti, I didn't have kurta. One of the wonderful things about my first visit was that at my first morning here, at like 3 o'clock in the morning, he sent Rasi Kendra Prabhu over to the place to show me how to put on a dhoti and to show me how to put on tilak. I'll never forget him for that. And I was like, it was a challenge. The whole thing was a challenge for me. All the ablutions I had to do. Yes, exactly. At that time of the morning, especially. Yeah, exactly. So this is in Houston, and I just thought, nice chinos, a very clean white T-shirt.
We had a long discussion when he was packing. Like when we're packing, what do you pack? We didn't have clothes.
Yeah. And he saw me there. He got up, came over to me. He threw me out of the temple. He said, you go, here's a devotee. He'll take you to his house. You put on proper devotional wear. And I did. And I learned a lesson from that. And he said, this isn't for me. There are many devotees here, and especially Indian-bodied devotees, and they can form a bad impression of me if they see you dressed like that my standards are not so high. And I appreciated that. The same as I never held anything about him. It was fine. I don't take things like that in any kind of a negative way. This is in the back of the house in the courtyard back there, and you could see, his hand around Sanjam's shoulder, another hand on Irene. He's in our home. He's not Tamal Krishna Goswami. He's not Srila Durga. He's Uncle Tamal. And that's who he is. That's how he wanted to be called. That's how they all knew him. He was such a loving and affectionate uncle. He had a special, I mean, to all of them, and they're so happy to be with him. He had a special relationship, I have to say, with Irene. I mean, she was so young, she was so cute, and he used to love to hug her, to hold her on his lap, and she loved it. You know, she really had a very, very special relationship with him. As he did, as Shamli mentioned today, and there's another picture with Irene, but also like it's actually Shamli and 3 other girls from the community. That's how he was with the children. I mean, you know, really.
And just about Irene, on the night that we found out that he had left the planet, it came like a huge bomb in the family, and the kids all ran to their beds to cry. And I kept hearing sobbing, and because we're on the phone trying to get plane tickets down here and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, somebody's still crying. And it was like an hour later, because we were on the phone, and it was Irene. The other 2 kids fell asleep. Irene was still sobbing in her bed. Her pillow was wet.
But they're not, I'm sorry for the time. Okay. I didn't know. And this is a letter he wrote to her. My dear Irene Maria, please accept my blessings. Today I'm writing you a letter looking at the photo of your wonderful toothless smile. She obviously, you know, she's the tooth one. Your face is so full of light, it reminds me of a jack-o'-lantern with a candle inside. I can't wait to see you, your brother, sister, and father and mother in India. We, at that point, were planning to go to India. None of us had ever been out of the country, and our decision was to go to India for 6 months. And actually, we were thinking of going to China. This is a whole nother Russ with him and us in China. But he said, China, why are we going to China? Go to India. And so we took off for India. I hope that as soon as you see me, you will come over and give me a big hug. See you in India soon. Your ever well-wisher, Tamal Krishna Goswami. That is October 24th, 1999. In December,
we left the day after Thanksgiving in November and flew out to Vrindavan.
You may have noticed, like, almost none of these photos were taken by us. They're all by other people. We never took photos of him. When we were together, that was not the mood we wanted. We were a family together. We were not, you know, looking at him like that. So we just tried never to do that. This is him walking on Govardhan.
He loved that we didn't take pictures or bring out a camera. He loved that.
I'm thinking, because these are like maybe the only 2 pictures I ever took of him at the palace in Govardhan. I took this one, yeah. And there was also 2 of his godbrothers with him. Maybe you've seen that. I just don't have time to get into the entire thing, but this is on this day perhaps, but this week is when we had one of our most significant, the 2 of us, conversations with him. The question was about our initiation and whether we would be initiated. He had been asked, especially in Houston, whether he would initiate us. And he told the devotees there, he said, I have so many, so many hundreds of disciples. I only have 1 brother and 1 sister. He always was sister, never sister-in-law, never used that word. I'm not going to give up those loving relationships just to get 2 more devotees. But what he told, and this was very sweet, but what he told us after was like, I just had to say something to them so they would stop asking me. And we had a long talk in his room in Govardhan, and he said, oh, have you met, just sort of, we thought casually, have you met some of my godbrothers? What did you think of them? Who have you met? We'd been in India for some months at that point, and we went through, we met so-and-so, we met so-and-so. And every time we named one of his godbrothers, he would like shaking his head. And we had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, we were like, I thought you liked them. Why are you shaking your head no?
It's like, oh, you met my friends. How nice, And then we started to understand that that was not exactly the question he was asking. And we went through all of them, and somehow the veil was down. There was only one of his godbrothers that we had met more than once at that point that we just never named. And that was His Holiness Giriraj Swami. That's a whole nother set of adventures and stories, I have to say, about how our relationship continued. This is actually before we got, a little out of order, before we got to, this is in Houston in 1999. And I mentioned Irene, but he had an individual relationship with each of the children, each according to their age and personality and character. I just have to, tell the story. When we were in Vrindavan, we went at Christmas time. Well, it's getting very late. I have to. We were there at Christmas. It was a big sacrifice for us. It was a big sacrifice for our children to leave the United States at Christmas time. We do Christmas.
Big, really big.
Presents as high as the kids, big Christmas, full on Christmas. And we were staying at MVT, and we went down and got one of the potted plants on the walkway. We decorated. Actually, you brought it up.
I lugged it up the stairs, decorated it. I brought all this stuff with me,
and they were saying, yeah, but does Santa Claus come to Vrindavan? Well, Santa Claus comes all over the world. We still believe in Santa Claus. So this is the whole thing. Oh, Santa isn't real. That wasn't us. I'll just say that. So of course Santa comes to Vrindavan, and we did. We had bought gifts for them. We had bought a little bit. We picked up some gifts at Lowy Bazaar for each of them.
And we always did a few presents on Christmas Eve.
They'd each get one present on Christmas
Eve.
Right.
And they were under our little potted plant tree, but they hadn't opened them yet.
We're all sitting there. It's getting dark. It's getting late. And where's Santa? And there's a knock on the door. We didn't know a soul in Vrindavan. Who could it have been? Everybody, the kids are, who's that? Who's that? We open the door, and it's Srila Gurudev with a sack over his back. He comes in, he's like, ho, ho, ho. And he sat down, and he took each one on his lap, and he said, have you been a good little girl this year? Have you been a good little boy? And he had presents for each of them, and he had presents for us as well. They were each very thoughtful, beautiful presents. In fact, it was his servant. His servant at the time said, from Assam, Sachi Dalal. Thank you. Sachi Dalal said that the whole time over there he was asking, Gurudev was asking him, do you think they'll like this? Do you think this is okay? Is this a good present? It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then we sat there, and it was an uncomfortable moment, and Irene...
We hadn't thought to bring him a gift. It just didn't occur to us that, he celebrated Christmas, or we didn't think we'd see him, I guess, and it was just a moment where we were perfectly still. And I'm thinking furiously what to do, because our hearts were wanting to give him a gift. And as the adults, we were just sitting there, but Irene jumped up.
7 years old.
Actually,
7, 9.
Yeah, she was 7 years, just turned 7.
Just turned 7.
She ran over to her little wrapped gift that she was going to open right before bed, picked it up and said,
yes, we have a present.
We have a present for you. Here it is.
Yeah. And she gave him the present. It was a slinky.
Gave her own present.
It was
to
a slinky.
Her uncle.
And he opens it
He
up.
opened
He was
it.
like, thank you. And he says,
Irene was like, oh, you know, not one moment of having given up her gift did she even show. You know, she was just so proud.
and the next day, indeed, we went to his house, and he played Slinky coming
On
down
the
the stairs. And this, on that trip, he was just. I have to move forward. I wish I could. I would. We went to Mayapur after that, and he called us. He said we had to be his emissaries. How did you call them? Emissaries? His goodwill ambassadors.
Goodwill and
He said, like, they're not always going to like me, but they're going to love you all. And just be nice, and, you know, their affection for me will increase because of you. And he gave us directions. He was not going to leave Cambridge for the meetings that year. He knew he was not. But he didn't want anyone to know that. So he gave us instructions with dates on them. On this date, he said, oh yeah, he's coming, he's really looking forward to it. Then he says, oh, he really wants to come, he's really busy with his studies, but he's hoping to come.
we had a little list.
Yeah, it was a whole series of the next one. And then finally, like the day before the festival, is, you know, he's just too busy, he won't be able to come. There are so many stories I could tell about how we helped soften some of the relationships and helped heal some of the conflicts between him and other devotees while we were there. I have to just mention, we brought back we then saw him in Cambridge. The whole family stayed with him for a week, and we brought back many gifts, and there was really only one gift that he was really moved by, and that was a devotee had given a tulsi leaf from Radha Govinda Mandir in Jaipur. And of all the gifts, that was, when he was moved, he would just stop and go silent. He wouldn't say anything, but you could just see the emotion in his face. And it was a very, very beautiful moment. He took us to London. I wish we had another. We went around the world speaking. This was us in London.
I did take that picture. I snuck it in.
You did.
It was on the street.
Yeah. So many, and of the kids, and beautiful stories there. Him with Jam, he would bring him up and have him chanting with him right there. Another little picture. At a Vyasa Puja. I'll just quickly go through these. We did go around the world and spoke. This would be in 2010, and we felt the disciples were really feeling very deep separation, and so we would give programs kind of like this. In Auckland, we gave a 3-day program with 3 hours.
3 hours, 3 nights.
3 hours for 3 nights in a row.
They got all the stories.
Yeah, they got them all. This was in Shanghai. This was in Auckland, also Auckland. This is in Vrindavan with the Chinese disciples. There's Bhakta Henry photobombing in the blue hat. And then at this, the end of our trip was the opening of the TKG house in Vrindavan, and we spoke there. And this is, for me, just the picture of our relationship forevermore. Hare Krishna. Please forgive us for taking so much of your time. Thank you for your patience. There was not time for questions in here, but please, you can come and ask us anything. Please know that we are entirely at your service. Anything we can do for any of you, please ask, and just be open and don't hesitate to approach us.
And But
Hare
I
Krishna.
just want to say you all are his greatest gift to us. So please.
Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Gurudev. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Raj Swami.
Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I think I can probably speak for all of us that we didn't want it to end, and we wish we had 3 nights and 3 hours together. So maybe you can reconsider staying tomorrow and not leaving. All in favor of that, say Haribo, Haribo. So, but if that's not possible, we just want to extend an open invitation. Please come back anytime, and we can continue the stories and pick up where we left off and fill in what we missed. Thank you so much for coming. And for those of us that had the good fortune of meeting Srila Gurudev personally, I think you helped to bring him back for us tonight and to help strengthen that connection and help us to remember him. And for those that didn't get the opportunity, I think you gave them the opportunity to meet him tonight. So thank you so much for doing that. Let's give them one more big Haribo. I would encourage you, if you can get the opportunity, please spend some time with both of them this evening. Sit down with them, ask them some questions, get to know them better, get to learn more about Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And at this time, we will break for prasadam, which will be served next door in the building next door. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam.